Hey guys, here we are for a short track guide in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series Chevy Camaro at Qualcomm Circuit in San Diego. For this track guide, I'm going to show the hot lap first, then I'll break down the lap in slow motion and analyze each corner. Hope you guys enjoy. So that was a 2:12.63 lap on lap 3 here of our practice session. And now let's break down that lap in slow motion. So as we start the lap here, we're at the finish line already. So we start the lap here over on the right hand side. We're trying to bring the car over to the left hand side of the track, crossing the finish line. We're looking at the left hand side for brake markers. Going to be braking just before the 2 sign, braking at around 50% brake pressure, then trailing off to get the car rotated in. Turn 1's a very bumpy section, so just making sure that the bumps don't unsell the car too much. You can see we had to do a bit of counter steer and exit. Getting back to full throttle, as we go over this crest here, you can see we actually left off the throttle a bit just for safety. The car can get really light over here, so letting off just that way it doesn't get too unstable, just partial let off, and then back to full, or at least full throttle for a second. Braking about a car length or two before the 3 sign, trying to make the car as far over to the right hand side as possible. We can probably brake a little bit later than we do in this lap. Downshifting to second, then waiting a bit later to not get too much wheel spin before you downshift to first. Once you get to first gear, the car really starts to slow down. We actually get a little bit more rotation than we expected here. You kind of want to get the car rotated a bit later than we do here because we want to get back to throttle about mid corner. So partial throttle mid corner, trying to manage the tire spin in the rear. And once you finally get the wheel straightened out, upshifting to second gear. Looking on the right hand side for the 2 sign, braking about a car length before the 2 sign starts around here as we get over a crest. As we go into turn 2 here, or turn 3 actually, there's a bunch of hills in the braking zones, so it's important to not get too much brake pressure or else you'll lock up as you go over these hills. So you can see we're going over this slight crest, braking just around it. And then there's another hill around here, and that's when you can start to get back to full throttle, or to higher brake pressure that is. Downshifting once again to first gear, trying to hold the wall, get the line as tight as possible next to the wall, getting back to partial throttle, and then once we finally get the wheel straight, getting back to higher percentage throttle. Upshift to second gear and bring the car over to the left hand side, beyond this double yellow line, opening up the corner, then getting on the brakes just a little bit to trail the car into the apex. And we're trying to apex just when these railroad tracks start. Then we can start to unwind the wheel and get back to partial throttle as we go over a few more bumps. We can try to straighten out the car here, getting over to the left-hand side as far as we can. And now upshifting the third gear, approaching turn 5, moving the car over to the right-hand side, braking around the 2.5 mark, braking just between the 2 and the 3, around like 80% throttle initially, and then downshifting to second, trailing the car in, and we're looking for some white signs or some white marks on the track. There is this crosswalk. We're trying to apex a bit later than that. There's these arrows, these, I guess, numbers on the road. That's where we're trying to get to the inside wall. If we get to the inside wall too early, we'll end up like overslowing, and if we get too late, we're probably gonna get stuck out too wide. So we're trying to apex, trying to get the car all the way up to the wall right as we cross these numbers, and then getting back to partial throttle. As we bring the car to the right hand side, we actually choose not to stay in this lane here because as we get over this crosswalk, it's really bumpy and you can bounce into the wall. So we're trying to give ourselves some caution by moving a little bit over to the left hand side here. That way, as we go over these bumps, we won't end up hitting the wall and we can counter steer as needed. So you can see a bit of counter steer there. We're away from the wall, allows us to have some extra caution. As we approach turn 6 here, approaching the left-hand side of the track, upshifting or keeping the car in third as high as you can, and then we're going to be braking as soon as we can make the wheels straight. So pretty much the wheel straight right now, then like 90% brake pressure, downshifting quite early for the engine braking, not the first gear because we get too much wheel hop. Then trying to trail off to get the car rotated in. This is a really easy corner where you downshift to second and then you turn on either too late or you don't trail off enough and the car understeers. It's really important to get the car as tight to this wall as possible to then put you in a good position for this left-hander. Once again, getting super close to the inside wall here, allowing you to get back to partial throttle much quicker, and then finally as we get to the outside wall, getting up to full throttle. Keeping in second gear as long as you can here before upshifting to third. You can probably keep it in second if you'd like, but you might lose a little bit of time. Braking about a car length before the 2 sign here, like 90% brake pressure or so. Getting a bit of a later apex than you'd think here because this corner actually tightens a bit later. We end up running a little bit wide here, but we're keeping the partial throttle and maintaining the momentum throughout the corner, bringing the car over as far left as possible, getting on the brakes around the 1 sign, but we're already turning a bit to the right, so trying to get the braking done in a straight line as much as you can. And then keeping the wheel rotated, even adding a bit of extra rotation here to make sure you don't get stuck over on the left-hand side of the track. If you get stuck over there, it just puts you in a bad place to try to go through this quick, like fast chicane. Trying to use the throttle to modulate the rotation through this corner, and then finally upshifting to third gear as we get into this pink section of the track, braking about a car length after the 3 sign, about 60%, and it's really easy to overslow for this section. If you can try to like partial brake through this section and then start to trail off mid-corner, it'll actually give you rotation through this left-hand sign or left-hand corner. It's really easy to get understeer through here and then kind of park it around the tire barriers. So the later you can trail off, the more rotation that you'll get through that left-hander. Once you get through the tire barrier, moving to the right-hand side as quick as you can, and then trying to straighten up the wheel to downshift to first gear. You're able to you can see braking around here, moving to the right-hand side, giving ourselves a wide approach into the left-hander, keeping it in first gear out of the exit, partial throttle to not get too much wheel spin. In the rear, upshift to second, and then we're going to be carrying second gear all the way across this section. No need to upshift to third, braking about a car length after the 2 sign. It's really important to actually not brake too early here or else you're just going to apex too early. Trying to get a wide entrance here, late apex to position yourself in a good area for the next corner, getting quite close to the wall here. Then for this next corner, you can actually upshift to third early if you want for some extra stability. I chose not to and just stayed in second, but it did make the car a little more swirly in the rear, eventually up to shifting to third before the corner exit though. As we're approaching the final chicane here, a little bit of counter steer, braking once again around the 2.5 mark. So you can see just as the wall turns red, about a car length or two after that, like full brake into second gear, and then starting to trail off late downshift to first gear, starting to trail to get some rotation mid-corner, and then as we turn in here, trying to have very minimal time between trailing off the brakes and getting back to full throttle. The car actually has a lot of grip in this final chicane, so if you can get back to partial throttle, you'll be gaining a lot of time on exit, trying to keep the wheel as straight as you can as you upshift to second gear. If you wait too long, you'll get a lot of wheel spin. The rear will get really upset as you're turning left, so trying to upshift to second while the wheel has minimal input. Finally, as you approach the final corner, upshifting to third early to minimize like too much torque in the rear, trying to get you can see we let off the gas a little bit there in advance of this off-camber corner, and then being patient to wait to get back to full throttle, using up all the track on the right-hand side, and that's a lap around a Qualcomm circuit. So hopefully that analysis helped a little bit, and now I'll show the lap in TV view. So once again, that was a 212.63. We can see we actually managed to beat Josh Bilicki in this session, which is pretty cool. And finally, our track conditions: 69 air temp, 80% humidity, 11 miles per hour wind, and our track temperature is 79 Fahrenheit. So air temp 69, track temp 79, and also 64% track usage. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and hope this helped. See you next time.